Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
I checked already. The Norse have a mythology, a myth about a cave. And in the cave there are candles. And each time someone is born, a candle is lit. And that candle will burn for as long as that person lives. Some of the candles are very long. Some are very narrow, very thin. Some are very thick, denoting short life, long life. So they compared life to light, to candles. Shakespeare probably didn't know that myth, but when he gave Macbeth the words, out, out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing, a little pessimistic. And then the Shakespeare of my generation, Elton John, actually Bernie Taupin, because he wrote this, talked about a candle in the wind, and Marilyn Monroe living her life like a candle in the wind. When Steve and Lindsay get home, they will light a candle. And that candle will burn for 7 days as a reminder, but just as a reminder. There's nothing magic about it. We Jews believe a lot of things. That's why if you want 3 opinions, ask 2 Jews, 1 question. But we don't believe in magic. And we don't know quite what happens when we die. John Lennon said, imagine there's no heaven, no hell below, only sky above. We don't know. We have some ideas. They're conflicting ideas. We'd rather talk about and bear with what we know of, and that's about life and the quality of life and how one lives it. We're reminded, the words of Isaiah, Al tira ki imcha ani, fear not, for I am with you. Al tishta ki ani Elohecha, be not dismayed, I am your God. Amatzticha v'yaratzicha, af timachticha b'min tzedki. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I'll sustain you through my power. How do we celebrate a life? Well, your presence is part of that answer. Friends gather, family gather, we cry, and then we laugh because we tell stories. We eat a little, maybe we drink a little. Then we tell more stories, and we cry some more, and we laugh some more. And the process of mourning is just like that, laughing and crying. We go up and down with our emotions until the day dawns, and it does dawn, when you're all right. It's not the same as it was. It'll never be the same as it was, but yesterday is not the same as today will be, and tomorrow is going to be different as well. But we emphasize the good. We emphasize that the glass is always half full. It's never half empty. Eshet chayal miyimsa v'rachok minecha michra. A good wife, who can find? Her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and nothing shall he lack. She renders him good and not evil all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy and extends her hand to the poor. She is robed in strength and dignity and cheerfully faces whatever may come. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She tends to the affairs of her household and eats not the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her, her husband too, and he praises her. Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain. But a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Place before her the fruit of her hands. Wherever people gather, her deeds shall speak her praise. Some almost 2,000 years ago now, on the coast of what is today Israel, in a town called Yavna or Jamnia, 20 years after the temple was destroyed and the Romans had scattered Jews throughout much of the empire, there was a meeting. The meeting was to decide the last books to be included in the Hebrew Bible. And 2 books got in, and 1 book didn't. The book that didn't was called Ben Sirach. And because it didn't get in, it was banned. Weren't supposed to read it, weren't supposed to study it, weren't supposed to even know it existed. So, of course, the rabbis who banned it continued to read it and study it because they cite it all the time in the Talmud. Like I said, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. But this is part of what Ben Sirach wrote at least 2,000 years ago. Fear not death. We are destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Bewail the dead. Hide not your grief. Do not restrain your mourning, but remember that continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory rest and be consoled when the soul departs. Seek not to understand what is too difficult for you. Search not for what is hidden from you. Be not overoccupied with what is beyond you, for you have been shown more than you can understand. As a drop of water in the sea, a grain of sand on the shore are our few days in eternity. The good things in life last for limited days, but a good name endures forever. I've known Marcy, I guess, for 10 years, 11 years, something like that. We would gather at Ellen and Bruce's house for various assorted and sordid gatherings involving great amounts of comestibles. But that was really the way I knew her. Didn't know her outside of the parties. Nice lady, we had fun, we laughed a lot. We always seemed to laugh a lot at those parties. So we wanted the family that could know more aspects to speak. I'm going to ask Steve to come up first.
Please bear with me. I want to get through this without anybody having to come up. Actually, it's easy to read without my glasses. Hi, everyone, for being here today on this most difficult time for me, Lindsay, and our most immediate family. I want to take this time to talk about Marcy, the sweetest person that I ever encountered. As a great many of you know, Marcy and I didn't marry until we were in our early 40s, having both been single our entire lives. Many of you who were at our wedding ceremony are here today. And one of my strongest memories of that day was after the rabbi officially announced us as man and wife. There was an exceptionally loud applause of the people in attendance who realized that the 2 people who waited this long to marry finally found love together. A year after being married, I was given the greatest gift anyone could be given by having the birth of my daughter, Lindsay. Marcy and I were overjoyed with the birth of Lindsay, and we raised a wonderful daughter with the love that Marcy and I provided. Marcy and Lindsay shared a special bond that only a mother and daughter can provide. Marcy loved our Cherry Hill house and neighborhood, but eventually we determined there was time for a change in our lives. As we aged and decided to sell our house and purchase the new construction house in Montebello. We both loved our new house, but the very early days immediately after moving in was shut down by the pandemic. The shutdown did provide the earliest opportunity to meet our neighbors who were all in the same situation and would gather outside, which provided the opportunity to meet them. Marcy was a wonderful kindergarten and first grade teacher, but her hidden talent was decorating our new house. For many of you who've come in and you have said it is beautiful, and Marcy was the person who fully decorated it and was proud of it. We shared many moments together in the past 33 and a half years that we were married. For the people who know me, there was the Steve Lehrman prior to being married and the Steve Lehrman that was after being married. Marcy was so kind and warm that she taught me how to be that kind of person as well. But many of you know that I wasn't that way at all times, especially when I was talking negatively about Trump. During marriage, there are many wonderful moments, as well as difficult moments. One of our more difficult moments was last year when our dog Ginger came down with fleas, and Marcy thought our house was infested with fleas, and I was of strong opinion that it wasn't, which led to Marcy taking a break for several days away from me at her sister Ellen's house. Marcy, if you are somehow able to hear me or sense me in some fashion right now, it is regrettable on my part for making you leave. I was so happy when you decided to come back home. There were some moments of conflict, but when compared against, there were some moments of conflict, but when compared against the wonderful moments that we shared, makes the moments of conflict insignificant. It was almost 2 years ago that Marcy was diagnosed with neuroendocrine tumor cancer. It was mostly controlled by the monthly shot that she received. When we recently found out that the tumor growth in the liver wasn't responding to the monthly shot, it was decided to advance to the next treatment method. It was last week in which that treatment method led to some rare reaction, which led to her passing away from us. I have always, from a young adult in high school, been a believer in science, as well as the universe's beginnings, and cosmology. From an early age, I've questioned the existence of God due to man's inhumanity to man, such as the killing and torture of 6 million Jewish people during World War II, just for the reason of being Jewish. And now that Marcy has been taken away from me and her loved ones, I'm having an extremely hard time in my mind whether there is a God and if I am being punished by taking something away that was so precious to me for questioning God's existence. The few people that I mention this to have told me that is not the case, but I cannot escape the reality of the situation no matter how hard I try. Both Marcy and I were talking about events after the procedure where we would visit my Michael nephew, his wife Tiffin, and their two sons Everett and Niall, who live in London, UK. And while there, we would go see the Phillies play their 2 games in London and either possibly go on a European river cruise or just visit some other countries while we were in London. We are not able to do that now. What I do have are the wonderful moments that Marcy and I have shared together. The majority of women that I have encountered in my life are not comfortable with maps and directions, and neither was Marcy. The reason that I mention this is that Marcy was my north, south, east, and west, guiding me through life since we've been married. And I do not know what direction in life has remaining for me. What I am sure of, though, is that I have loved Marcy, and that has been taken away from me. But wherever she is now, the memories that I have can't be taken away. All I know is that my heart is broken, and I miss you so much. I am ravaged by your passing, and to rectify that, I have decided that cremation, as opposed to burial, is the best option, since I will always have a part of you nearby me, Marcy. Marcy, you and Lindsay were the greatest thing that I ever had, and I will ever have for all of eternity. Your husband, Stephen.
Some years ago, I attended a funeral in New York of a teacher of mine. And before the service started, I was talking to his oldest daughter, who I'd known for quite a few years. And she looked at me at one point and said, "You know, all of a sudden, I'm an orphan." She was 78 years old at the time. My teacher, Mordecai Kaplan, was 102 when he passed away, much to the surprise of his doctors. We never lose that feeling. We never lose that sense. And I think it's especially true of those of us of the boomer generation. We sort of think of ourselves as not only immortal, but forever young, much to the dismay and disagreement of the next 2 generations. But this is who we are, this is what we do, and this is what keeps us going, keeps us alive. Lindsay?
Hi. Most of you know me already, but I'm Lindsay, Marcy's only child. Thank you all for being here today. Looking out into this room, it's so clear to me how much she was loved. This has been an incredibly painful time for my dad and me, and we are so endlessly grateful for each and every one of you. Sunday was the worst day of my life. I flew in on a red-eye flight from Los Angeles that morning. My dad and I stopped at the Oregon Diner for breakfast. I couldn't eat anything. And then we drove straight to the hospital. Within 2 hours of our arrival, she was gone. She waited for me, and at least I got to say goodbye. My mom loved living life. She was always happy and had the most positive outlook each and every day. Everyone who knew her zest for life. We celebrated her 75th birthday last summer. And after telling her she didn't look like she was, quote, 3/4 of a century years old, that was my dad. But it's true, she never looked her age. Everyone always assumed she was 15 years younger than she actually was. We asked her what she was most grateful for, and she said, with the biggest smile on her face and her hair sparkling from those tinsel highlights she would get, she said simply, being alive. My mom was amazing, to say the least. She had a hard childhood, and she didn't come from a lot of money, but she put herself through school, earning both undergraduate and master's degrees to complement her passion of teaching. She knew she was signing up for a thankless, underpaid career, but she didn't care. She loved it. Those classrooms of 30-plus kids and barely any additional help, thank you, Philadelphia School District. After posting on Facebook about her passing, so many of her old teacher colleagues commented to say how much she supported them at work. She was there to offer advice and to be a shoulder to cry on. She touched so many lives during her time on Earth, and I didn't even know about so many of them. And she showed me it was possible to have a fulfilling career and a family, a combination I eventually hoped to achieve myself. As much as she loved her career, she loved retirement even more. The past almost 10 years have been the best of her life, and I was lucky enough to see her grow into the best version of herself. I've never seen her so happy and healthy, especially once my parents moved into Montebello. She loved her neighborhood. A typical day in the neighborhood would look something like this. Wake up, take Ginger out on a walk, feed her breakfast, force her into therapy hugs. As some of you know, Ginger hates human touch, except for my mom. She truly loved that dog back to life after adopting her. Mom would then cook herself breakfast, watch The View, do some online shopping, go actual shopping to Trader Joe's or TJ Maxx, take a walk with her friend Linda, play canasta with the girls at the clubhouse, come back to the house to make dinner, and end the night watching her latest favorite TV show or an old Turner classic movie. She loved this life up until the very last minute. My mom believed in me always, sometimes more than I believed in myself. She never questioned my decision to move across the country, at least not in front of me. She let me go, her only child, so that I could achieve my dreams. She missed me so much. I know it was so hard for her, but she rarely showed that pain in front of me. My mom apparently had a rule when I was a little girl. She never wanted to use the words pretty or beautiful in front of me. She didn't want me to think that those were the only values I could have as a woman. Instead, she used words like smart and powerful, an example of the kind of woman she was herself. Of course, I didn't know that she had this rule until I was well into my adult years, but looking back now, I realize she never once made me feel bad or guilty about the way I looked or the way I chose to feed or to dress myself. I only recently realized the profound power this decision of hers had on me in terms of shaping my self-confidence and my self-love. I will never take those tools she bestowed upon me for granted. My mom showed her love for me in so many little ways. She would always be sending the best-smelling candles on Valentine's Day every year, always send me different nail polish brands to try. And when I was home, she would cook any meal I wanted. I would try to call her as often as I could throughout the week, but no matter how busy we ended up getting, we would always FaceTime every Sunday without fail. That was our tradition. My mom was the most amazing woman. She was the kindest person and was always so patient with me, which says a lot if you knew me as a teenager. She had so much love to give, and she loved all of you, and now she's with me in my heart, and she is in all of our hearts. I shared the following on social media already, but I wanted to say it again here. Her favorite book to read to me as a child was I Love You Forever by Robert Munson and Sheila McGraw. The story is about a mother who sings a lullaby to her son at each stage of his life. I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. At the end of the book, when the son's mother is old and dying, he recites the poem back to her. I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be. I love you so much, Mommy. Thank you.
Yeah, you've got to follow that.
Oh, geez. Well, hello. This freaking sucks. And if we weren't here, I'd probably say it another way. I don't have to tell you that. I could stand here and tell you all the endearing qualities and characteristics that Marcy exhibited and taught us, but you already know them. What I'd like to do is share a few things that I hope will make you smile because Marcy put a smile on all of our faces. Have you ever heard anyone say, "Boy, you're lucky because you can pick your friends, even though you can't pick your family"? Marcy was both a friend and family. We grew up together and oftentimes shared the same bed. She held my hand when I was afraid to go to sleep. She always encouraged me to do things. For instance, she encouraged me to perm my hair when my husband, Bruce, was away for a week. Remember this? It was a great perm, terrific, except it turned my hair orange. Each time I looked in the mirror, I said, "Marce, isn't it like orange?" And she said, "Oh, no, it's all right, it's the light. Move over a little bit." She also encouraged me to paint our kitchen in the middle of the night, also when Bruce was out of town. He didn't go out of town after that. That didn't quite turn out right either. Marcy was a paragon of calmness, like the time our son Scott decided to push his head through a slated iron fence at Disney while we were waiting for Bruce to get a stroller. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "Oh my God, call the fire department." Yes, she was very calm. She also taught me about the birds and bees. So Bruce, you can thank her for that. Marcy's determination and perseverance were unparalleled. My parents couldn't afford to send us to college, but she wanted to go. So she put herself, as Lindsay mentioned, through Temple University, going to night school for several years, and then finishing her degree in day school. I have always been in awe of her tenacity and her desire to let Lindsay fly, urging her to be her true self and move to California. We're on the same wavelength here. She touched everyone with the lessons she taught us and showed us, not just by her words. Our youngest grandson, Niall, wanted us to mention that Aunt Marcy was really very kind and made cards. His favorite one, actually, is still in his desk drawer. Marcy was a great cook. Several nights a week, she would make us late-night snacks. And she loved baking and making desserts. She was fairly adventurous in that. That was before she was gluten-free, by the way. One particular dessert was an unidentifiable truffle. You'll see Michael over here laughing a little bit. She chose a recipe that called for a cheesecake batter and lots of other ingredients, including tangy lemon and some other kind of filling that just didn't quite make it. Well, all of us at the table ate it anyway. We didn't tell her how bad it was until our son Michael came down to taste it, and he said, well, I won't say exactly what he said, but what the is this? Can I have a straw? What is this? He was the only one to tell her the truth, and for years afterwards, teased her unmercifully for the recipe for that gem. But she was a good sport about it and went with the ribbing. She cared a lot about mental health, mine and our brother, and paid attention to us. She babysat a lot for us and was very vigilant with him. Interestingly, she had a different idea about how to help me become independent. She would wait until it was dark. No one was in the house. Larry had already gone to bed. And she would dial, in those days, 579, wait for the dial tone 6, if any of you know that. When you do that, the phone rings. I picked it up. Each time I picked it up, hello, hello, and all she would do was breathe heavily. Totally scared me until I never wanted to answer the phone again. It was years before she told me the truth. She was clearly taken from us too soon, but I guess heaven needed another angel. I am heartbroken and miss her so much. I spoke to her every day, almost every day while walking, interrupting her walks with Lynn, interrupting the canasta game. It didn't matter. She would tell me, I still didn't remember that she was either playing canasta, mahjong, or walking, or running club. I couldn't keep her schedule straight. Rest in peace, dear Marcy. I treasure the relationship we had and will always stay in my heart. We all love you. We are all filling our hearts with all the lessons you taught us, hoping your kindness will rub off on us.
I said, you seem to have gotten over the telephone thing. There is no such thing as the Jewish funeral service. And those of you who unfortunately have had to attend a number of them know that certain things rabbis will read. There's always what's called the hesped, the eulogy. But essentially, depending on whether you're an Orthodox rabbi, conservative, Reform, Reconstructionist, somebody dragged off the street, there are different manuals, they have different readings, and you take your choice on what is appropriate. The rabbis argued for a long time over what was more important, study or action. Philosophers have argued that since at least Aristotle. And the rabbis decided that study was more important than action because study leads to action. In other words, whatever we do is fine as long as we can back it up, as long as we know what we're doing. And Judaism has really been a quest for understanding. When it comes to what happens when our lives end, we don't know. We have different opinions. And even among the Orthodox, essentially all those opinions are considered equally valid until you can prove it. So we don't know, but we have our hopes. And we express those hopes into particular readings, which we're going to do in just a moment. The first is called the El Malei Rachamim, God full of mercy. And it prays for, as you'll hear, peace for the one who has departed. And the second is the Kaddish. And the Kaddish is a very unusual, it's not a prayer, it's a reading. It's not in Hebrew, it's in Aramaic. We say it when someone has died, but it never mentions death. It's saying the world is good. What we believe beyond the world is good, and I'm going to keep believing that till you can prove otherwise. We say it in memory of the dead. We say it for ourselves. In just a moment or two, I'm going to ask you to rise for the El Malei, and then to be seated while the mourners rise for the Kaddish. That'll conclude the formalities. For those of you who are going back to the house, is the dog going to be there? You're on your own. There are directions out front. So let me ask you please to rise. El Malei Rachamim Shochin Bamromim Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Ashchina B'Ma'alot Kedoshim U'Toharim Kezoha Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Malka Bat Yosef Shehalcha Le'olama B'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchata Ana Ba Harachamim Hastireha B'Setek Nefecha Le'olamim U'Tzror B'Tzror Chaim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachrata V'Tanuach B'Shalom HaMishkava V'nomar Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Marcy Lehrman, who has gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is her portion. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Will all but the mourners please be seated? Ready? Yiskadal, Yiskadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'yamad Divrach Rusei, V'yamlich Malchusei, V'chayachon V'yamechon, V'chayei Dechol Beis Yisrael, Bagala Uvizman Kariv, V'yimru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Yoram U'amei Almayah, Yisbarach V'yishtabach V'yispa'ar V'yisramam V'yisnasei, V'yisadar V'yisalev V'yisalal Shemei Dekudsha Barichu. Le'ela min kol berchosa v'shirosa, tush bechosa v'nechamosa, damiran b'yalma v'yimru, Amen. Yehei shlom rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru, Amen. Again, on behalf of the family, let me thank everyone for coming today. First two rows, please.